Welcome to Nuanced Beauty. This podcast is intended to be a spot where my husband Bill and I will capture some complex thoughts and challenge us to hold to our opinions loosely so that we can see the beauty in others and the beauty in ourselves. I want to challenge us to dive deeper into those everyday topics and those sticky topics that we might shy away from, or we might bulldoze over others with our opinions. Because I think there's wisdom in this idea that if we all thought exactly the same, there would be no need for anyone else. So let's have a conversation and let's get nuanced. Welcome back.
Hey, y'all.
So to kick off this episode, I guess in the spirit of, I don't know, how did you word it, Bill? Editorial correction?
Editorial correction.
Yeah. We have to cycle back to meal planning and cooking. And we did not touch at all on the topic of doing like a meal subscription plan to HelloFresh or the like. This particularly applies to us in our household, as I am heading back to work. And even before I accepted a job offer, I was considering trying HelloFresh because we found that right now I've been pretty heavy in the meal planning and grocery shopping world. But for things to come up in the afternoon and for me to hand over meal planning to Bill, it felt super overwhelming because it felt like having to explain everything that needed to go down to make dinner was just too much. So we have at least two friends that we know who do HelloFresh meal subscriptions. And this came up recently, so it was fresh on the mind. And I decided that we're going to go ahead and give HelloFresh a try. That way, we both have the recipe in front of us, and either of us can make dinner. If something comes up on my plate and Bill needs to do dinner, he can make dinner. So we're 1 week in, and
aside from a brief bout of food poisoning by one who will not be named,
the food poisoning was no good.
It was no good.
It was very bad.
The food was good, though.
The food was good. The meals were good. We did 4 meals this week, and we have 4 meals ahead of us this week. The portions are pretty decent. And the one critique I have is that there is still a decent amount of effort in actually making the meals. Reading through the recipes, I would say a beginner cook, if you thought like HelloFresh was something easy, it's not easy. It just replaces grocery shopping, and you should add 10 to 15 minutes to the timing, because the timing estimates for everything like the meal prep or the cooking part, I just think they're short on time. And we're kind of intermediate cooks. Like, we have a decent level of knowledge in the kitchen.
Yeah, I'd call that a feature, not a bug. That's actually one of the things I've been impressed with. Which, to be clear, we are not in any way affiliated with Meal Plan. Although, if the good people at Meal Plan are listening with our wide listenership and want to throw us a subscription, we'd gladly
be all about it.
we would consider retracting our food poisoning comment if we were given lots and lots of American dollars. But I actually consider that a feature, the fact that it's not easy, because it actually is almost like an intermediate cooking class having to do all this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's giving us like ideas. I mean, like the breading and the mayo as you're coating on chicken before you put like panko breadcrumbs, and mixing in butter into the panko breadcrumbs. That's something that we didn't typically do when we use panko to coat things. So there's a few like tips and tricks that are given that have been kind of like insightful, and like we'll add that to our Rolodex of thoughts as we move forward. And we're gonna continue with the HelloFresh for a time.
This is all meant to be in the theme of that podcast, which was really about moderating your expectations for yourself and what cooking for your family has to be or doesn't have to be. Uh, we talked about planning our hot dogs, and we talked about uh, not trying to overcomplicate things. This is a great way of not overcomplicating or not feeling the stress of trying to come up with something creative and just cooking
Hmm.
for your family, and that's all it has to be. So
Hmm. And outsourcing a little bit of the planning.
just a little bit of the planning, just to make decisions on what's going to be important and not important. It might be important to you to cook a meal at home, but not important that you came up with the idea, and that's what this is perfect for.
Yes, and the less communication effort between us to pass off the recipe to one another. That's the component that's big for me. So,
Yeah, you can call it communication, or you could call it outsourcing your expectations of the outcome.
yep, yep, yep,
It's
yep.
really way more about that.
It is. It's all about that. But for now, I'm gonna consider the we're on an equal playing field because we both know what's for dinner.
Mhm.
I'll consider that a win, and I'll work on the second part later.
Okay, so all that was editorializing on a previous podcast, and I think we said all we needed to say there. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the title of this podcast is Nuanced Beauty, and the idea again is to kind of talk about things and maybe in a different perspective or how things might uh, conflict. But uh, this could uh, delve into what grinds my gears, because something ground my gears this week, and I think there's nuance in that. I'm going to call it nuance because that makes me feel more sophisticated when I talk about things that grind my gears. We Christina and I have been part of a small group that have been discussing money matters, and it's not a Dave Ramsey class, so it's something similar. It's really more
Not a
about
financial planning, but more about how you relate
how
and
you
how
relate.
you relate to one another with money and how you yourself have emotional ties to money and values, how your
Hmm.
values and your timing and money all kind of goes together.
So we're reading this book, and it's been good. It's been really well done, well structured. But there's just this conversation about retirement. And I was having a conversation with a friend recently, and they were very stressed about having enough money for retirement. And this book talked about, oh, you got to save up for retirement because you want to be able to live your real life, after you're done working, and you want to be able to do it young enough that you still have your health to do it.
Mhm.
And I feel like we have uh, been sold this idea that your life is mindless drudgery and you do not exist until you retire. And that's when things are going to be better. Things are going to be better when you retire. You can
Mhm.
be happy when you retire. You're going to be alive when you retire. And I just so thoroughly reject this idea that your real life begins at retirement. Like, are you
Mhm.
alive today? Are you alive right now? And if so, then you could be living your life now. You don't have to wait until you retire.
Reach
And I'm
this
not saying
milestone.
you could be traveling the country right now. That's not true. Like, obviously we have responsibilities to do now, but this
Uh-huh.
idea of you have to wait to do what you want, you have to wait
You
to
have to
be
put in your
happy,
time
you have to
right
put in
now
your
in the
time,
job.
all this. I
Yeah.
we In the church that we were a part of, we had a member who uh, he owned this big furniture company, so uh, he was kind of the local business guru, and he'd talk about work life balance. And at the time, I kind of thought he was full of crap. But then I grew up a little bit, and he'd say that work life balance is hokum. I'm saying hokum because I can't say the word I want to, because again, we're trying to avoid the explicit tag on this podcast.
Yes.
Uh, he wouldn't say the word I want to say either, because this was at church. But because you are still alive while you're at work.
Mhm.
Like, you don't cease to be because you're at work. Now you can be miserable
Mhm.
and be at work, and I frequently am, because I don't like working. Um, but it doesn't mean that you aren't alive. And to completely uh, export, like, just to give up this portion of your being, your created being, is I think wrong.
And
And
there's like some
and
compartmentalism
again,
to it.
we're trying to be nuanced. So for me to say things so definitive as wrong might be antithetical to what we're trying to do with this podcast. So please disagree with me. We have a new logo, if you guys haven't noticed, and it shows these
Yes.
ripples that are interfering with one another,
Uh-huh.
which is the
Crashing into one
crashing
another.
one another, interfering. So the physics term for two waves coexisting.
Nice. Okay.
So by all means, disagree with me on this.
Yeah.
Um, or engage with our Instagram. Yeah. Hey, plug for our Instagram to to disagree on this. But uh, I
Yeah, it kind of it goes into maybe the American dream that we've been sold about the progression of our life. And it's like step one, graduate high school. Step two, go to college. Step three, get your first job and get married, then get a house, then have kids, work really hard for 20 to 30 years and retire. And this progression, like, it's nuanced. You have your first job, you have your second job, you live in one state, you move to another. And granted, I like that's where it comes down to. There are some folks who have actually um, been fortunate enough to stay planted in one spot, and they feel pretty pretty content with where they're at and the job that they're doing, and they haven't gotten caught up in that roller coaster of changing jobs. But it is also more culturally acceptable in our generation to move from job to job. But there is still, even in that, like, whether you're changing locations or jobs, there's still kind of this weight of, I have to do this, then this, then this, and that's all leading to retirement. And
and
there's
we're
this
speaking as
shiny.
people who have largely, with the exception of the fact that we jumped jobs, followed that path. We
Mhm.
graduated high school, we went to college, we did all that. But
Mhm.
this thing we sold is nuanced. It's also very new.
Mhm.
And it's a post industrial revolution. Really, in the last 50 years, really, we had this idea of you buy the starter home, you get married, you have the kid, in that order. And our generation's really effing it up,
Yeah, and
or
there's a lot of
being effed up by it, depending on your
right,
perspective.
right.
Uh, and because we've lived through 4 or 5 different catastrophic things in our lifetime, a couple of different financial bubbles, a
Mhm.
pandemic, all of this.
And we're
Uh,
strapping on a lot of debt just to go to
strapping on a
college,
ton of
like
debt,
starting
exponentially more than
out
previous generations, and
with
the
a
old
lot of
people won't
debt.
retire and give us their high-paying jobs.
Yeah, the old people are holding out in the market. They don't want to retire
They
either.
can't retire because they lost everything in the
In
'07
the
bubble. Like,
bubbles, yeah.
so, but we're still weighted by the expectations of how things were supposed to be.
Mhm.
We're supposed to be able to retire at 65. We
Mhm.
graduated high school thinking that we just had to hold out until 65, and the fact is that's probably not true.
Yeah.
But we still have that expectation for ourselves, and we
Yeah.
still look at our 401ks, if you're lucky enough to have one, and say, am I going to make it? And if you don't have one, you're saying, damn, I'm not going to make it. Can we
Yeah.
beep it? Can we beep that? I think we could beep that.
I don't want to figure that out. Probably, but I don't want to figure
Okay.
it out.
And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, we're not irresponsible people, because the thing is, you might not be able to make choices in your life because things can happen to you. But
Mhm.
this idea that there is a finish line that you just got to get over, I
And
think.
then things will be like,
Well, I think we need to hold on loosely to that, because I think
yeah.
we're created for work. And I've
Mhm.
hung out. I had the privilege of getting to spend time with a group of older men. I would get coffee every week and just talk about life, the universe, and everything. And I was the youngest guy there, so I got to really soak in their wisdom. But what
Mhm.
I got to do is listen to a number of people retire
Mhm.
and struggle with it,
Or come out of retirement.
or come out of retirement. But
Uh-huh.
mostly the that was the easy part. Oh, I know how to work. I can go back to work.
Uh-huh.
But when these men who had worked their whole lives suddenly didn't have a thing to wake up for the next day,
Mhm.
it was actually a very difficult thing for them.
Yeah.
So this idea that things will be better when, or I'll be happy when I don't have to work. I think on some level we're built for it. So
Mhm.
I
And there's like a component there that um those that like that are in a healthy space and who are financially set up and do retire, them having the ability to like redefine their purpose in like having coffee dates and pouring into other people who are too busy to do such
volunteer
things,
work.
volunteering,
Yeah.
or like especially like volunteering and mentoring others and coaching. And there are so many ways that are not technically
but there's always
employed.
going to be work for you.
Hmm.
And I think if you don't go in, and yes, we're going to give advice to all the people who are about to retire as 33-year-olds.
No.
But I was about to. So that's what I was about to
Okay.
do. That's the words that were going to come out of my mouth. Is
Okay.
you?
33-year-olds. Okay.
Are we not?
Uh,
Oh, you're not. That's
I'm
right.
not.
I,
Keep going.
my wife's old. Um, if you go, I don't relish the idea of going into retirement with the idea of now this the time for me um, to do whatever it is I want to do and be of no use to anybody else.
Hmm.
And I feel like people who have sunk their lives into their jobs retire thinking that they finally get to rest and then they die
Mm,
kind of
yeah.
quickly because
Or they go back to work. Second
or they go
job.
back to work.
Yeah.
Or they sit over their coffee and talk about how the person who took over for them at their job is running that company into the ground,
Hmm.
uh, which is exactly what my dad's doing with his retirement, complaining about how his
The new
successor,
post office is
yeah,
going. Yeah.
is he's really screwing up all the stuff that I worked for. Well, it's not your job anymore.
Yeah, it's their job. Let
Yeah,
them make their
let
own
them
mistakes
let them
and
run into
grow.
the ground. Yeah. Uh,
Well, and then I think though, um, like, to share a whole different side of things, neither of my parents are retired,
mm-mm.
and neither of them plan to retire. Like I don't see retirement on their horizon.
We were
Like
never.
that, but so I what I'm sharing here
Mhm.
is that I think a component that you have, like you have a little more pressure, or you've had a little more buy-in, or just people speaking into you that like retirement is the like the queen bee, or I don't
That's
know,
the
the
goal.
bee's
That's
knees.
your purpose of your life is to be able to
But I
retire.
didn't get that
Yeah.
message because my family was a little poorer. And so, like, that message of, like, oh, you got to make it to retirement, that wasn't, I mean, I got the message, you got to get to college. So the
Hmm.
progression message is a little more
Yeah.
prevalent if for me, like, get to college, get the good job, like, get the better job. And like do something with your life. Like I got a little more of that message
Hmm.
and a little less of the like you got to retire, like work toward
My
retirement.
my parents pressured me to set up a Roth IRA when I got my first. Well, it's not my first job. The first job I paid taxes on when I was 15. They wanted me to set up my Roth IRA.
Uh-huh.
Like
Yeah.
that is when
And
that
it's
that
not like, and
conversation
it's
started.
not bad like it's not bad
No,
advice. It's not bad
no,
advice
but it's idolatry
to
of
take
like
it to
the
to
level that they did to
yeah.
so this is getting so that's really interesting that the difference between our perspectives growing up.
Right.
I
And
almost jumped
this
in saying,
topic's a little more
yeah,
on your like on the heels for you because it just hits home a little more. And to me, like I just don't picture, like I don't picture retirement the same, in part because like I think that we are making some financial decisions to make it possible to not work a standard 40-hour work week. But I think that having even if we're not working a standard 40-hour work week, which I'm not right now, we both like just find things to do that would be community driven and relationally driven, and yeah, that like have a component of interacting
hmm.
and paying it forward a little bit, and like trying to do
So
things, I
and
guess.
so we're getting into more aspirational talk of because we don't know what the future is going to hold on it. That's kind of what we picture, and we don't picture this finish line. And it's interesting you're bringing up how you were raised versus how I was raised, and we're raising two kids right now. So
Hmm.
I want to put you on the spot. How are like think about how we talk about even money issues in general in front of our kids. How are we messaging? How are we going to message about retirement?
Right. I don't think we've I don't think we've gotten there yet. Our eldest is 6, our youngest is under 2,
It's
and
not too early to start that 401k or start that Roth IRA.
no, but we have the college, like we have a college fund going, but we also like I think for us we're looking we're looking at that progression of where I go of the next thing is after high school, whether it be college or trade school or something. I think that that's more. So we're not even talking about retirement. That said, we do have like a mission statement, and our family mission statement includes like retiring with dignity. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe we got to update the verbiage there
Yeah,
because
we wrote that immediately after we took a
we're
Dave
fresh
Ramsey
off the
class.
heels of, and so that's where I think that we have to add in the wisdom in leaving um, an inheritance to your children. That topic does come up. And even just the wisdom of having your life in order so when you do pass, you're not leaving junk for your kids to clean up.
Well,
Is that harsh?
I'm chuckling
I
because
don't mean to
I
be
know you're talking
harsh.
about literal junk. Like,
Well, like tangible and intangible.
yeah.
Like if you don't know what to do with the stuff, like you have an
Hmm.
estate sale, and it's a very somber, hard time though. I mean, thank goodness we have not had to go through this. We haven't
Hmm.
had to go through this yet. But I think that for us, the messaging that like we would want to pass to our kids is having that like responsible um
Stewardship.
yeah, of what you have. And even, I mean, what's more applicable to us is making sure that we have someone to take care of our kids should we
Hmm.
pass before they're grown up. Like
Hmm.
that's where we're at in the step. So I guess we haven't been that far-sighted about talking about retirement with our
No.
kids. It hasn't come up yet.
And yeah, the question is, what are they hearing that we're not saying? But
Right.
again, we kind of delved into some more aspirational thought of what, how do we want to do this,
Mm-hmm.
and to continue plugging engagement with our Instagram. How have you guys talked to your kids about this? Uh,
Yeah.
we're gonna get people to comment. We're gonna get one.
We've got
We're
to.
gonna get a comment one
Yeah.
of these days.
But yeah, it's
So
an interesting idea of like, do we live to work and then so that we can retire and we can check these boxes in this neat order and progression. And retirement, is it the goalpost or is it just another step in the process that we get to enjoy when we're there?
and where I've landed on this is, whether you love your job or hate your job, you are still alive in the moment that you are,
Mm-hmm.
and your time is so finite. And so to say this time doesn't count because
Mm-hmm.
I'm saving up for a different time is just a waste of your life.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm what I'm exhorting you to do is to be present in the moment that you are, and acknowledge the fact that you are alive in that moment, and that matters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a decent enough place to end on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like it.
cool.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us today. You'll have to let us know what you think about retirement and how the progression, how the hamster wheel plays out in your life. Have you felt the stress of the milestones or not? As we are talking about finances and retirement, I thought a great book recommendation would be Billionaire Wilderness by Justin Farrell. The subtitle is The Ultra Wealthy and the Remaking of the American West. This author had the opportunity to spend 5 years in Teton County, Wyoming, which is the richest county in the United States. And it's a fascinating read. He does a great job tying in interviews and stories and um, the opportunities that he had to hang out with these people for a length of time. And the biggest takeaway that I recall was this concept of these ultra wealthy folks having a strong social pressure and also a philanthropic desire to be perceived as generous and giving back. And what was interesting is he explored the number of like 501c3 nonprofits that were in the area, and there were so many, like so many, but they would pop up and they would fail within 2 years. So it would just be like you'd have a nonprofit after nonprofit, and the maybe it's that like 80/20 or 90/10 rule where there's just a handful of nonprofits that actually succeed longer than just a couple years. But also this component of where the ultra wealthy would give their money. And what he observed was there was a strong desire to preserve the environment. And obviously, environmental topics can be considered political, but they're a lot less messy than giving your money to the poor and other people. Like dealing with poverty and homelessness and dealing with actual people can get really messy. And there's something less controversial about buying up land and considering that like a philanthropic thing and being virtuous and generous. Um, so yeah, I recommend this book. It was a fascinating read. I loved how he tied these stories together and how he shared some of the insights for both how people spent their money and how people gave and what people valued. So check it out. It is called Billionaire Wilderness by Justin Farrell. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in today. We have made it to February, 3 months running. Thank you for tuning in. And as mentioned, you can follow us on Instagram at nuanced_beauty and shoot me an email at nuancedbeauty@yahoo.com and rate and share the show. Take care.